But let's dive into this afternoon's first panel discussion. My illustrious panel are here on my right. As I say, we're going to talk about 5G NR and the status of 5G NR. Obviously, as many of you will already be aware, the 3GPP Release 15 specification has recently been approved. Lots of attention, lots of noise, lots of speculation about what that means in reality. We're going to learn from our speakers about that. Some trials are said to be already underway, but let's find out and hopefully during the discussion separate the hype from the reality. We have an expert network from Nokia, Qualcomm, and an independent expert. So I will allow my panelists now to quickly introduce themselves, if they would.
Lady first. Okay, good morning. My name is Francesca Sartori. Hopefully I keep you awake a little bit this afternoon. Otherwise I start dancing. Okay, maybe it's more attractive than 5G. Okay. I'm responsible for 5G sales for Europe. And I'm always said I sell the dream. Up to you, George.
Hi, thank you, Francesca. So my name is George Tsirtsis. I'm a Senior Director of Technology in Qualcomm in the EMEA team, and I oversee the 5G activities of Qualcomm in the European region.
Good afternoon, everybody. Shahram Miri. I'm from a consulting company called Mobintech. Previously, I've been with 5G. I see the first 5G research center in UK. And then I remember the first 5G talk we had in this forum back in 2012 in a corner room. So we've come a long way, and pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's kick off. First question really is given the nature of this panel discussion, could I ask you to describe your activities that either you personally or your organizations have been involved with in relation to 5G NR so far, to date? Francesca.
Okay, we can start. Actually, Nokia is really involved in this 5G, and today we have more than 50 cooperation around the globe. So in all the market. This is very particular, especially if you look at the previous technology that was mainly driven by some specific market rather than other. This time we have, if you look at the world, all the market is really active, and Nokia is working with all of them. Of course, each market has own different characteristics. There are some markets much more technical driven, exploiting millimeter wave and all this new area of spectrum. Other markets are much more use case driven to understand, okay, let's assume that technology will come sooner or later, but what we can do with these use cases. Other are thinking how to position in the new verticals, rather than, okay, telecommunication is granted, fine, but how we can go beyond the connectivity, how we can go bringing the telecommunication in the other vertical. Today we are really in a kind of silos. Mm-hmm. So, and it's very exciting because running the trials all over the globe, you can see all these dynamics, all these different aspects that all together need to work in order to make 5G flying.
Okay, thank you. George, can I ask for Qualcomm's perspective and update?
Yeah, so trying to summarize a very long list of things here, but I think it's interesting. In 5G, there are, in many respects, is evolving out of LTE, so there is a lot of experience that carries over. So we don't start from scratch. We don't need to relearn everything. However, there are some things that are fundamentally different. The most obvious one is millimeter wave. So Qualcomm have done a lot of research about this for a long time, and especially we had to go through like extensive exercise of understanding how millimeter wave works and behaves with different materials, and how it goes through materials, reflected, refractions, all these things, as well as the materials of the phone itself, or whatever device you are using. So this is a very kind of painful, slow kind of experimentation that had to be done. But once we went over that hump, I think over the last couple of years, what has been happening is, of course, a lot of focus on standardization to develop the standard that we now finally have. And in parallel from last year, we have started, as the standard was getting developed, we started IoDT from very early on with all the infrastructure vendors, including Nokia, where we use developer platforms, FPGA, really large, piece of equipment to develop slowly the technology as it gets defined. And that forms the basis of understanding of all the aspects of the technology, which we are now, this year, working on commercializing and miniaturizing on our side, of course, to fit everything in form factor accurate devices. And this is what has happened most recently. So in MWC, for example, we showed for the first time our one platform, FPGA platform, interoperating with all 5 major infrastructure vendors on sub-6 and 3 of them on millimeter wave. So I think that was to me, was one of the most significant steps in commercializing the technology the last few months.
Okay. Thank you. Sharon?
Thank you. We are not doing anything in terms of testing or development. Actually, we are looking at the whole 5G game from independent point of view. We see 5G as totally different animal than 4G, and we believe that we have to do things very differently in all the senses, from the business aspect, economic, and policy. So we try to make sense of what we are doing and work with service providers and to see whether we are doing things in order and separate what is hype, what is PR, and what is reality. Mm-hmm. As I said, 5G is very different in all the senses. And I don't talk much about the technology. We've been good at it. Standards are doing excellent job. We have great resources there, but the missing bit, or the bit which is lagging behind, is the other aspect, is the business model, is the economics of providing a new kind of telecom services, and the policies. I personally feel that we are missing some on that area, and we ought to look at it very differently. And I will tell more on this at latter part of our talk. So I allow.
All right. Thank you. So this is a technical track. So I'd like to ask the panel their views on the latest 3GPP specification profile, so release 15. George, perhaps start with you and kind of Qualcomm's view. Is it what you expected? Is it missing anything? Is it better than you'd hoped?
Oh, it is wonderful. So, 3GPP, of course, has, and all the companies that have contributed there. Qualcomm is one of the big contributors in that. And it has really been a very, very hard work to come to this, to where we are today, where 3GPP, I don't know if you know the story, but it kind of accelerated the schedule quite a bit so that we can look for commercialization starting in 2019. And that's why release 15 is actually in 2 parts. We now have the non-standalone architecture done and all the details around that. There is a little bit more work for the standalone version towards the end of the year, but all the commercialization that's coming in 2019 is based on this, or where we are today. And of course, it's a very challenging timeline from now to the end of the year to commercialize something that was just now finalized in the specifications. So the spec is, I think, in a very good shape. It's never perfect, by the way. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's enough for interoperability to be assured, and for the work to allow us to interoperate between the ecosystem and commercialize the first version of it. We are looking at the first step in a multi-year process of 5G specification, which will not be unlike what happened in LTE. We have been developing LTE over the last 10 years. It's not like one go and it's done. So I think we are in perfect shape to commercialize from next year, and it's very good to see that we are at this stage now.
Great, thank you. Sharam?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer of the dates which are being pushed around, and I apologize if I, upset anybody. I've been long enough in this industry to see the rush where it is valid or not. For those who have been involved in 3G, you might remember in 2000 when Japan rushed to bring the 3G to operation, and they came up with the early version FOMA, and they hit a lot of problem. In 2003, I was with 3 when the first ever 3G was deployed in Europe, and technology wasn't quite there, and early days of 2003 and early part of 2004, entire company were busy preparing change requests to standards. It took a lot of effort, and we had a lot of hiccups. So I'm a big fan of doing things in moderation and right time. Standard early versions of 5G, which is just released. My guess is based on the past experiences. We need another 12, 18 months before, we claim that we have something in product. Yes, we have done a lot of trials, but trials are done by emulators, not real modems. Trials are done to mainly show, how great we are in providing higher speeds, and we've showed huge amount of that. But not much really on real trial with real modem. And my guess is that latter part of 2019 is a realistic time to do meaningful trials. And I don't think we should really talk about any commercial deployments earlier than 2020. But then again, this is my humble view.
No, we like a bit of tension in the panel. It's always good. So we'll see if we can build on that. But Francesca, do you have any comments on the specification?
Yeah. I would say that indeed, this time we have the new technology coming in waves. And as George said, we have the first round already happening, but we are waiting for even the second one to introduce the standalone. And then, of course, we are waiting for the release 16 for having the network license. That is really something particular for 5G that makes the difference with respect to the previous technologies. But it's okay, because in addition to technology, this time we need to learn how the new ecosystem will work. It's not more I put my base station on air and then I will sell a bunch of data and SMS or data and voice. When I talk with my colleague as well, with the different customer, I ask, okay, what you're selling today? Data and voice. What you're going to sell in 3 years' time? And they look at me and said, there are more than 50 different use cases. So we need to learn how to sell, how to position in the market, and to choose properly. So the fact that the technology comes in waves allows us at the same time to learn how to introduce the 5G in a way that will be very beneficial, not only the telecommunication per se, better speed, blah, 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 latency, but even the whole society. That means start involving regulator and minister, and being more involved with the third parties, other companies that never been involved in telecommunication. They don't know how our world works. So you see, it's a much more beyond this technology, and having these different steps allows us to grow properly and really be efficient.
Okay, very good. Every major technology update that's come along in mobile, there's always been a huge amount of hype preceding the actual launch. The reality has always been a little bit, well, a little bit might be a generous term, but the reality has not quite lived up to the hype. Can I maybe ask for the panel's comments on, we've all heard the hype about 5G, separating out what we really expect to see in reality? Sharon, can I ask you to give your view and see if then...
Yeah, I think Francesca had a good point on the use cases. Again, I'm going to be a little bit controversial. being in this industry, I've always heard from operators that they want everything, they want it tomorrow. Yeah, and when it comes to investing money and spending, they are not there. And the result is, operators are still making money, vendors are getting busted, one by one, big ones are gone. So, there is this element that we have to be careful. And as I said, today, 70% of the traffic, 75% of the traffic comes from video. That's the bit operators, they make money. The prediction is by 2020, 90% of the traffic will be carried by a smartphone. There is no solid information on sensors or machine to machine. There is not much really on it. So when we are going to make more money on the video, when we are going to make money using a smartphone, where are the other bits of 5G? What is the rush to bring, ultra reliable, ultra low latency, features of 5G? We know where operators, they make money. We know what users are asking today and how this demand is going to increase in terms of the traffic, in terms of the capacity, in terms of the, the data rate. So I think we should focus on that one and allow a gradual and natural sort of learning to other use cases. Today there is no solid use cases for some of the services that we talk, apart from what we call enhanced mobile broadband.
Okay. Francesca, do you want to?
My point would be also, do we know how the other verticals works? I always ask, do you know which is the pain point of a CEO of hospital? How I can meet these guys or ladies and ask, I have a wonderful 5G. He or she will say, so what? I'm CEO of hospital, not telecommunication. So if you want to sell something, go to my IT department. So now, if we want to really go beyond the telecommunication, that is one of the key factors of 5G, we need to start learning also how the other vertical works. We are their pain point, starting from their pain point, go back to the telecommunication. Today, we said, I have my bunch of hardware and software, and I sell something based on this hardware and software. So it's a kind of top-down. I need to start from the down now and understand how to go back to 5G. This is something completely new perspective. The operators are taking granted that they can sell something because technology allows them. Today, we need to understand which are the pain points of end users, and our verticals, in particular verticals, I don't think consumer, verticals, are different than telecommunication. They have different dynamics. We need to know them and then go back. This takes time, but it will be essential for really make a broader usage of 5G.
Right. George, hype, reality?
Yeah, hype versus reality. So, look, there is a lot of hype with every G. But the hype, in my opinion, the 5G hype was last year. If you remember last year, we were full of demos of 100 gigabits per second and 200 gigabits per second, and a lot of hype. This year, you don't see these things anymore. Things have come down. We're talking about more realistic targets. We are working towards products, real products, and the commercialization does not depend on hype. Commercialization is happening from very early next year. And for example, this is not something that we have to guess whether it's going to happen or not, because the US is deploying as we speak. And they have a very clear use case, which is they have a capacity crunch, which they pretty much have no option but to deploy 5G. I think many other parts of the world are making their plans, and of course different regions at different times based on their regional needs. I think Europe will surprise actually people with how fast we'll start deploying 5G. We will see over the next 6 months, people will start announcing. Of course, a lot of these plans are not public, but you will hear a lot of operators already talking about 2019 as the start, and we are working towards enabling the ecosystem to commercialize in the first half of 2019. And we think there will be several operators that commercialize in the very early part, Q1 and Q2. So, and of course, we cannot confuse that, the start of commercialization with the ubiquitous existence of LTE today. Okay, this, LTE is at where it is today after 10 years of deployment. It's not going to happen overnight for 5G. But it will happen a lot faster, because for 4G, operators deployed had to deploy the infrastructure from scratch, from nowhere. While 5G is going to start by overlaying a layer of a new carrier, or a 5G carrier on top of existing infrastructure, which changes the timescales and the investment that is required. I'm not saying that it's cheap or that it will be done overnight, but it will be accelerated. And with respect to use cases beyond just capacity, I think there is a confluence of many things that will give rise to new use cases. eMBB will continue to be important. I think it happens that I think by accident almost, it's just the technology matures this way that we see VR and in particular AR maturing in my opinion, in the next couple of years. Of course, in Qualcomm we have a lot of research in that area also. So I can see that that technology that requires a lot of high throughput, low latency, while mobile, coming together at the time that 5G rollouts are really coming to effect in 2019, 2020. And that can give a new perspective on eMBB and what we do with it. And in parallel, of course, verticals that Francesca talked about are going to be happening. And that's also not a mystery, because it's happening already in LTE, with LTE. But there are limitations in LTE that 5G will be better at. So the Industry 4.0 does not wait for 5G. It's using 4G today, and it will just use 5G when it comes. So I don't think that we have to, fantasize too much to see how this will go.
Okay, thank you. We've only got a few minutes left, so I'd like to open it up to questions from the floor. Any questions for the panel? And if you do have a question, could you please state your name and your organization, and whether the question is for the panel as a whole or for any individual member. So any questions from the floor? It really is a graveyard shift.
We can ask questions.
Yeah, no, we can keep going. We can keep going. We've got plenty. We've got plenty.
We can ask questions then.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, yeah, that's an even better idea. I'd like to... well, let's just go for the I think we've touched on it. Shahram, you gave your view on when you would expect to see the first commercial launches. Maybe elaborate on that a little bit and kind of explore the alternative views and also what we mean by commercial launches. So I don't know, Francesca, do you want to give your view first?
You touch a good point. And what does it mean, commercial launches?
Yep.
There are a huge variety of launches, from the press release to the full rollout. It depends. Of course, the real commercial launches, as George said, we need to have the ecosystem in place. We need to have the spectrum in place. We need to have the auction. The operator need to have the frequency, so it takes time. But we have seen already some preparation ongoing, and 2019, first half 2019, we will see the launches. Then we can decide what does it mean launches. Is 100, 200 base station or nationwide? It depends of the market as well. This year we is ramping up, and next year we will start having the first this the plan.
Okay.
But we need to have the ecosystem and frequency. Remember, it's not only
No, absolutely.
the full package.
Well, let's maybe understand a bit more about the device ecosystem. So,
No, but I want to touch first on a point Francesca made. I think it's a very good point regarding spectrum and spectrum auctions. And in Europe, they are coming together actually. A lot of the spectrum auctions will be done this year. Actually, UK, of course, recently completed the auction. And in terms of when, for example, now UK has spectrum, okay? So when are they going to deploy? So I want to see our UK operators sitting on that spectrum for a couple of years without doing anything and see what trouble they're going to get into, really. So I think it's a no-brainer. But I think, as I said, I think the deployments will start in early 19. One point to make about the devices is that in Qualcomm, we very consciously concentrated all our efforts on solving the smartphone form factor, and we didn't do a small carry on FPGA. We didn't do a prototype that is CPE like. We didn't do any of this. All our effort is on smartphone, because if you solve the smartphone problem, everything else falls out. The smartphone is the most challenging form factor because it has everything in it. It's battery powered. It's what people use all the time, so it has to be really, really high standard. If you can enable that, doing IoT is relatively easy. Doing CPE is even easier. And not only that, but the economies of scale that exist in smartphone don't exist in any other industry. And you have no hope of enabling verticals, which have to start from scratch, and it's a kind of a account by account, one by one market. We have no chance of scaling that market without a smartphone ecosystem to support it.
yep.
Right? So if you start from CPE, let's say, you haven't done anything yet. All the work is ahead of you. So, but if you do the smartphone, everything becomes easier later. So, of course, 2019 will be eMBB and smartphone to a large extent. There will be CPEs, there will be hotspot devices. And from then, we will start seeing experimentation with verticals using these devices. But then, very quickly, we'll see how the scale of that system allows all the verticals to also get specialized equipment.
Great. Thank you. Sharon, anything you'd like to add on
Sure, just
launch dates?
I think we all seem to agree that the first sort of flavor of 5G would be, what we call enhanced mobile broadband. This is what we know. What we know is likely to be there. The demand, and today my worry is that today a lot of things that early versions of 5G claims to be doing can be done by 4G. Cheaper and easier. We have a small cells there which can provide huge amount of capacity. But I agree that the first flavor eMBB will be there when, I don't know, I would look at 20 plus. We should be careful what exactly commercial launch means. I've seen in LTE when in 2009 an LTE deployments announced, we were talking about a handful of radio stations in a network.
Yeah.
That we call it a commercial launch. But this is not what a chip vendor or equipment vendor is after for. They're after volume.
Yep.
The other bits, I'm not sure. I think telecom industry needs to expand and learn how to do business in other sectors. Verticals, they need to do how to provide telecom services. And an automotive manufacturer, they don't know how to sell these services. They don't know how to price it. There are a lot of barriers, regulatory policies, safety, and all that. It's going to take some time to get there. And my guess is, we are looking at good 4 or 5 years before we really see something, we can call it true 5G. Not the AMBB, the other bits and pieces.
Great. Well, look, I think we're out of time for this panel discussion, but it's been fascinating. We've actually posed ourselves more questions than we've answered, so we'll see how many of those we can explore during the course of the afternoon. But I'd like to thank my panel, Francesca, George, Sharam, for their time and their contribution. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.